Road tripping with the Gamecocks through March. Elijah Campbell covering the USC women at the SEC tournament in Greenville. Sponsored by Griffin Pools and Spas, Lexington. On the Game Network, the 107.5 The Game app, and at the Game TV radio on YouTube.
What is up, Gamecock Nation and fans of 107.5 The Game? It is Sunday morning. It is SEC Championship Day. And you know what? Before we even get into that breakdown, one, I'm Elijah Campbell. Hi, nice to see you outside of the regular hours from 6 to 9 from Monday to Friday. Two, I need to remind you here on the Griffin Pools and Spas SEC tournament coverage, don't call it a rivalry. Don't call it a series. And just know one thing. If South Carolina and LSU are playing basketball against each other on the women's side, you know who to pick in that game. And it is not even close because once again, for the 19th straight time, South Carolina and Dawn Staley beat LSU. And it's for the second time this year, 19th straight overall. LSU doesn't have a win in this series since January of 2012. And I think all of us can attest to all of our lives being a lot different in 2012 than it is right now. It's been a long time since South Carolina has lost to LSU. I hear my mouth there. Very lovely on the video stream there. But final score, 83-77. And look, I'll go ahead and be up front right now. When halftime hit and LSU had a 4-point lead at halftime, I had my worry meter at 8. I remember talking to a few of my media member friends, Lulu Kesson, Noah Chast, and saying, it doesn't feel good at halftime, and thought maybe this is the day that streak ends, right? Because they've played so many close games. Carolina and LSU, the reason people might want to call it a rivalry is because of like the emotional elevation of the games in which they play. You can also consider it maybe a quote-unquote rivalry because the games have been really good. And the game earlier in Baton Rouge this year was a really good game, and it came down to Flau'jae Johnson missing a couple free throws late and South Carolina knocking him down at the free throw line to put it out of reach. And a couple of years ago in Baton Rouge, it took Bree Hall making a few clutch three-pointers in that game to be able to win it. It took a thrilling championship game, the SEC title game that year, right? They've had some really good matchups, and in a lot of those, it's been really close, and it felt like in all those games, it can go either way. And yesterday, I've had that same feeling of this thing can go either way. And I thought maybe once halftime hit, I thought maybe this is the game that it ends, where LSU gets that break. Because, look, Tigers were up 4 at halftime, and they were at 4 without Flau'jae Johnson, their best player, or at least maybe the most, I guess, popular player on the team, not having a good game. She was 1 for 6 at halftime, only had 6 points. And it felt like maybe with Mylasia Fulwiley getting as hot as she did in that first half, and as she was in the game, that maybe this is the time that LSU does it, because LSU dominated the boards. In the first game in Baton Rouge, LSU grabbed 40% of their missed shots. That's a lot. That's an incredibly high offensive rebound percentage. It's an offensive rebound percentage that's going to give you a chance to win every single game you play. And in the first half of the game yesterday, LSU grabbed 40% of their missed shots. And I figured if that's how it's going to be when it comes down to cleaning the glass, South Carolina's in trouble. And it just felt like they were in trouble. Yeah, I know Medina picked up a couple of fouls, and her having to sit a lot of that first half is what resulted in that rebounding discrepancy. But I thought LSU was the more physical team. They were quicker getting out in transition. They were definitely playing LSU's game at a certain point. I know South Carolina likes to play in the full court and play fast too, but it felt like the game conditions were right for LSU finally doing it. But a lesson that you can learn is that if Raven Johnson's playing basketball, don't bet against her too. I mean, this is a girl who won 4 state titles in high school in the state of Georgia and a high school national championship. Also, a woman who has won multiple national championships at South Carolina, a multitude of SEC championships. You count the redshirt season, the 5 regular season titles, and win today, then that's 5 SEC tournament titles. Wherever she plays, she wins, man. She's a total winner. And yesterday was total proof of that too, because even when the things felt like they might have stalling out on offense or you're missing a lot of shots at the basket, Raven Johnson was the ultimate shot in the arm. And for the entire game, 22 points, 8 assists, had her thumbprint all over this basketball game. And whether it's getting hot from shooting outside, 4 of 6 from 3-point range, or whether it was late in the game after she already got her 22 points, getting out a couple of key assists to really put the game out of reach, it was Raven Johnson's to lose, and Raven Johnson doesn't lose. That's the point. Raven Johnson does not lose basketball games, and it certainly was not the case on Saturday night. And look, that game is why South Carolina is where they are. Kim Mulkey talked after the game in her press conference about kind of the difference between LSU and South Carolina, because she started off like, the opening statement says, like, we're not the South Carolinas or the UConns. We're having a hard time. We think we're elite, but we're not elite because we, don't finish games. There are too many mental lapses. And an example of that was late in the game when LSU was down a couple possessions with 45 seconds left. They still had 2 fouls to give. Common sense tells you should probably start fouling. You should probably send South Carolina to the free throw line. Start fouling, prolong the game. And I remember sitting there courtside thinking, why the hell is LSU not fouling? What are they doing? And ultimately, they wasted 30 seconds off the clock. And then by the time they had to foul or even had a chance to, Carolina scored, and that pretty much was the ball game. But she said that was the plan, was to foul. And she told them to foul in the huddle. And they go out there and they don't do it. It's a mental lapse. LSU had those mental lapses in the game, especially when it came to turnovers. This is a Tiger team that turned the ball over 14 times yesterday. Some of those on bad passes, bad risk assessment, and ultimately wound up in a bad decision that forced a turnover. And Carolina helped force that. But to South Carolina's credit, too, they didn't make those mental lapses. They don't make those mental mistakes. Leadership from Raven Johnson, the experience of a Tanaya Latson and a Medina Okot, championship experience from Tessa Johnson, and having Joyce play her best ball in the second half. When she finally started seeing some shots go in, finally was able to get a couple of shots at the basket and converting on them, was a huge difference in this game. You look down and try to break down everything that's, on these sheets and what you saw on your television, or if you were at the arena, one of the many Gamecock fans that was at the arena at Bon Secours Wellness last night, you can break down everything. And a lot of it comes down to South Carolina made winning plays at the end, and they made the proper adjustments. In the first half, Carolina threw out their zone defense in the late first quarter, mostly through the second, and LSU scored on it. Like, to Kim Mulkey and LSU's credit, they found ways to score against that zone defense that most of the teams that South Carolina has deployed that against this year haven't been able to do. They found ways to be able to get the ball inside. They set high ball screens and set really good high ball screens, right? There's a difference between setting a screen and setting a good screen. LSU is setting good screens out there, freeing up their guards to be able to get into the paint and then play make in 2-on-1 situations. And they were able to score on that. Another reason why at halftime I felt like Carolina was in trouble. And then it slowed down. In the second half, Carolina, to their credit, still played a lot of zone, and it was a lot more successful. They were able to force more shots from the outside. And LSU did not have a good 3-point shooting day. They were 7 for 21 on the day, only made one of their first 11. And I think that playing the percentages there helped South Carolina a lot. But Carolina just didn't make any of those mistakes, man. They just didn't make the mistakes that LSU did. If you look at the assist turnover numbers for Carolina, 17 assists, 9 turnovers. That's a huge difference in a ball game. That is high emotional intensity. Mylasia Fulwiley against her old team scores 24 points, drops 4 dimes. It looked like she was involved and invested, and you were getting the best version of Mylasia. We've seen it here with her, where some days you get really good Mylasia, which is one of the best players in the country, and then you get maybe some turnovers. You get a couple of things here or there that doesn't necessarily equate to winning, or maybe it's a bad shooting night and it kind of takes her out of the flow of the game. That was not the case last night. The case last night was you got the best version of her, and it's one of the best versions of Fulwiley you'll see all season long. But you were able to survive that because you made the adjustments and you improved in the second half. I alluded to the rebounding earlier and how LSU was dominating on the glass in the first half. LSU grabbed 8 offensive rebounds in the first half. Medina Okot gets to play a majority of the minutes in the second half. LSU grabbed 2 after that. Went from grabbing 8 in the first 20 minutes of this game to grabbing 2 in the last 20 minutes. And a lot of that is Medina. And I know Medina struggled to score early in the game. For 3 quarters, she struggled to score. She was 1 for her first 11 from the field. But you know what makes her so valuable is that even when she's not scoring, she is incredibly effective because she creates second opportunities. If you look at Medina's rebounding total, she grabbed 13 boards for the game, but 5 of those were offensive. She had more rebounds in that game than South Carolina had total offensive rebounds in the first half. And that was what was missing. When Medina's on the floor, she can take away your team's offensive rebounding ability and also bring an offensive rebounding ability to you to kind of increase your margin for error. And that's the type of player she is. I don't think it's a coincidence at all that you look down on the stat sheet after the game and see that her plus minus was plus 15. That was the highest on the team, meaning when she was on the floor, South Carolina outscored LSU by 15 points. And at halftime, you found yourself down 4 because Medina got in early foul trouble and she only played 7.5 minutes. She ends the game playing 25.5 minutes. And when she's on the floor, you outscored them by a lot. That's her value. And when you have a lot of players who don't need to score the ball to be valuable, that makes you an elite team. That's what elite teams have, right? There's so many instances in the sport where if one player's not scoring the ball, they're not as effective. They're not as valuable. And I can tell you right now, that is not the case for the South Carolina team. Tania Latson was that way on Friday against Kentucky. She wasn't scoring the ball a ton, but she was still incredibly valuable. Raven Johnson's been that way her entire career here. She doesn't have to score the ball. She doesn't have to score 22 points like she did last night for her to still be valuable. Does it help when she does score 22? Yes, because it got you out of the offensive rut and it was able to help get you some separation later in the game. But my favorite part about her game, because she's such a great defender and such a great facilitator, is that she does not have to be the scorer to be incredibly valuable for your team. She can do it in many other ways. There's many other ways to be able to see the value in what Raven Johnson brings you. And last night, Medina Okot was the exact same way. She didn't score very well. Again, 1 for her first 11. It felt like there was a lid on the rim last night whenever she was getting a shot up. But she did make 3 big ones in the fourth quarter, and she grabbed a ton of rebounds. The 13 rebounds was a big part of this game. And that was a huge part of turning things around in the second half. Because once South Carolina got that lead back, they didn't surrender it. And I think a big reason for that is because they were able to keep LSU off the glass a lot easier. They were able to create a lot of those second chance points. And Medina is such an anchor on defense that teams' 2-point percentages are going to go down when she is on the floor. It's hard to underestimate that or overestimate that type of performance and just that level of impact. So much went right for South Carolina last night in the second half. And again, that's why I learned a lesson to not feel that worried whenever they are down at halftime because of the adjustments they can make. And even when things aren't going well from making shots around the basket, like the 2 losses you've had this year, a neutral site loss to Texas and a road loss at Oklahoma, they missed a lot of chippies at the basket. But part of their superpower is just being able to get a lot of shots at the basket. And ultimately, you get enough shots at the basket. If you just hit a decent percentage of them, it's going to add up. And it added up for South Carolina last night. And it resulted in a 19th straight win over LSU and second win over them this season. And once again, keeping Kim Mulkey and crew away from any type of SEC title. And that sets it up for today because I'm exhausted doing it. It's not a funny bit anymore. It's a harsh-ish reality. South Carolina and Texas get to play basketball again. Now it's great because all the games are always really good, and it's a great coaching matchup. Kind of like with Carolina and LSU, the coaching matchup brings the elevates the profile of this game. Dawn Staley versus Vic Schaefer. We're getting it again, and we're getting it for the 3rd time this year. We're getting it for the 7th time in the last 2 years. And considering these 2 teams played in the Final Four last year, and considering Texas, I think, is a number 1 seed for this NCAA tournament too, the same way South Carolina is going to be, I think it's fair to say that there's a good chance they end up meeting again. And if South Carolina gets a 2 seed in the Final Four, or if they get a 2 and 3, and the bracket lines up where you see them again up to potentially meet in Phoenix, there's a good chance we end up seeing it again for a 4th time this year, which if they play in the NCAA tournament, that'll be 8 times in the last 2 years these teams have played. When it comes down to breaking down this game, the familiarity is the story. And this is where coaching matters the most, because I can tell you all about how Rory Harmon is one of the most reliable point guards in college basketball. I can tell you about how Madison Booker is one of the best tough shot makers in college basketball. I can tell you about their bigs like Kyla Oldacre, who are some of the best rebounding bigs and interior defenders in college basketball. I can do all of that. But I don't think that does the matchup justice because South Carolina's got a lot of that too. And there's a whole lot of evenness up and down the board with South Carolina and Texas. And we've seen that with the games that they played. It was a really tight matchup in Las Vegas. It was a really tight matchup at Colonial Life Arena. But this is going to come down to coaching. This is going to come down to Dawn Staley versus Vic Schaefer. These teams know everything about each other, right? They know everything about each other. They know, like, I forget who it was yesterday. I think it was Joyce Edwards after the game yesterday in the locker room was talking about, we know their hand signals. We know their plays. They know our hand signals. They know our plays. There's nothing that they can throw out there that Texas hasn't seen. And there's nothing that Texas can throw out there that Carolina hasn't seen in turn, right? This goes both ways. And when you've played 7 times in the last 2 years, there's a heightened level of familiarity that certain things just aren't going to maybe work against them, or certain things are not going to be unforeseen. So execution and coaching too. Can you throw in a wrinkle, right? Can you try to throw in there something that they aren't expecting? That's so hard to do when you have this level of familiarity. And it's not like you can just throw in a bunch of new plays on offense this late in the season when you already have so much terminology. You already have such a full playbook, and you already have certain terms and, I guess, words to describe your coverages defensively. There's only so many different things and terminology you can use to disguise what you're going to do on defense, and so many tells that you have. But if you can find one and find an edge somewhere, because these teams have been so even in the 80 minutes of basketball they've played against each other this year, finding that is going to be incredibly difficult. But that's why these are the 2 best coaches in the game. 2 of the best, it's these 2, Gino, Kim Mulkey. You can go up and down the list. There are a lot of great coaches in women's college basketball, but these are 2 of the best. And there's a reason that they meet so frequently, and not just because they're in the same conference, but because their teams are always good enough to see each other in the NCAA tournament. And it's never in the first or second round. It's always late in the season because their teams and programs are built to meet late in the season. Now, in terms of what I think is going to happen, I'm giving South Carolina an edge here because I already admitted to, I think this is a coaching matchup, and I'm taking Dawn Staley over Vic Schaefer any day. Vic's a Hall of Famer. He's a legend in his own right, but he's not Dawn Staley. Dawn has Vic's number for the most part. Vic's been able to squeeze out a couple. He had one this year in Las Vegas. Last year in Austin, when they played, he got him. But in the 6 previous meetings, South Carolina owns the series 4-2. This is more of a rivalry, right? This is more of a rivalry than LSU is because Texas has actually shown an ability to get you from time to time. And that's what makes this matchup really interesting today. Last year when they met in Greenville in the SEC tournament, where Vic moaned and whined and complained about having to play in Greenville, and what's basically a South Carolina home game. And if you watched on TV, you could hear it from the crowd noise. If you were at the game, then you know just as damn well as I do, that's a South Carolina home game. But last year, that really affected Texas, and South Carolina's ball pressure and their defensive ability really affected Texas. You had Bree Hall to shut down Madison Booker and hold her to another really inefficient shooting night. Now, Bree's not here this year, but you have great perimeter defenders. You have Raven Johnson. You have Tanaya Latson. You have Tessa Johnson. And if Madison gets into the paint, you have 2 really good interior defenders that you're starting with, Joyce Edwards and Medina Okot, that can really alter what those shots are. I don't think it's going to be a similar thing like last year where South Carolina blew them out and they cruised the entire second half. I think we get a much closer game this time. I think South Carolina will ultimately end up winning by 10 points, but it's going to be about a 5-point game in the last 3 or 4 minutes. And it's going to feel like Texas has a chance. But again, the way Raven Johnson's playing with the game last night, she might not have to score 22 today to be able to win the game. And I don't think that's a prerequisite to winning this game is Raven Johnson scoring 22, but she's going to have the ball in her hands in key situations. Let me take you back to earlier in the season when they played at CLA, and South Carolina needed a couple huge buckets, whether it be down or the game being tied, but it's crunch time. Raven took matters into her own hands, made a couple of strong drives, got to the basket, and made what I like to call seasoned vet buckets. seasoned vet buckets where you know the game's on the line. You know you can get to the basket. No one's going to stop you. She did that, and it won them the game. I think it's going to be maybe not in that same manner of getting the bucket that wins the game, but maybe making the pass that leads to the bucket that's going to help win the game, and stacking those on top of each other throughout the course of a 40-minute game, and especially in the last 5 to 10 minutes. Again, she's the best winner in the sport right now. If she's on your team, you do not lose. And I think ultimately Raven will end up becoming the MVP of this tournament because of those performances. Man, I'm excited. 3:00 today, we will crown an SEC champion and add another fun chapter to the South Carolina-Texas women's basketball rivalry. Again, 7th time that we're seeing them in the last 2 years. And a reminder, all of my coverage of the SEC tournament here on YouTube and on the airwaves at 107.5 The Game is brought to you by Griffin Pools and Spas. Just like yesterday, it is a marvelous day outside. It is a perfect day to be able to hang out. And if you're looking at your pool and you're thinking, man, it's fake spring's over, real spring's coming in, it's time to get that bad boy looking sharp and looking at its best and getting it all clean, Griffin Pools and Spas here for you. Or if you're looking out at whatever's in your backyard or on your property and say, you know what, a pool or a spa sounds really good. Well, Griffin's Pools and Spas are here for you for that, because it's their 50th anniversary sale right now. And as a family-owned and operated business, you know they're going to treat you well. And with the 50th anniversary sale, they're treating you the best. 12 months, no interest financing on spas, above grounds, and liner replacements. $500 discount on above ground pools, $950 savings on all spa purchases, all of them. And they have all the spa brands too, like Bullfrog, Tropic Seas, Generations, Marquee. They have swim spas in stock, and you can save thousands on in-ground pools with fiberglass and vinyl liner, and in-ground financing available with $500 cashback voucher. That is a lot. In Griffin Pools and Spas here for you to be able to take care of all of your pool and spa needs. And there's no better time to either acquire said pool or spa or get help making it look in top notch. That's what Griffin Pools and Spas here for you. They say they make you feel good. And you know what? I believe them, because that certainly makes me feel good. All savings make your boy here feel good. So shout out to Griffin Pools and Spas for sponsoring this coverage. I'll be breaking this thing down after it happens. But until then, enjoy the game. Listen to Brad Muller on the broadcast. And we'll talk to you after, and we'll certainly talk to you during the week on the early game.